Good afternoon. My name is Ed Patterson. Welcome to the next video on the Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith. I'll make a statement that I think you may not be aware of. If Joseph was going to write this on his own, he got in a tremendous problem right off the bat if he did it on his own. Are you aware of the first words out of Moroni's mouth to him? Can you think through the Joseph Smith story? What did Moroni say? He said something that's going to cause somebody some real discomfort. Let me read it to you. This is Joseph Smith's story, verse 33. He called me by name, interesting, and said to me he was a messenger sent from the presence of God to me, and that his name was Moroni. Now listen carefully what the next little bit is, all in verse 33. And that God had a work for me to do, and that my name should be had for good and evil among all nations, kindreds, and tongues, or there should be both good and evil spoken among all people. Now he didn't say, well, you're going to be known for good and bad in Palmyra, or New York, or upstate New York, or America. All nations, kindreds, and tongues, by all people. Okay, right out of the gate. That's the first thing Moroni said to him. Bam! Now, on one side, if he's making it up, what? Whoa, do you think that's going to happen? That seems like a long shot. And if it's from God, who knows the future, is that the truth today? 195 years since Joseph translated. So what are we thinking today about Joseph Smith? Typically, he is connected with, specifically, the Book of Mormon. Of course, starting the church, many other things, but the Book of Mormon is kind of the key out of the gate for him, certainly. So, what I want to do today, briefly, is to say, well, how well known is the Book of Mormon throughout the world? Now, you may not know this. I didn't know it, but it's an interesting statistic to me. There have been 130 million books published in the world. That's from Google AI. I presume it's close. Right? They gave a specific number. All published books, 130 million. Well, where would the Book of Mormon kind of fit in that? I mean, is it down, don't even get an asterisk? Is it where? The Book of Mormon is in the top 6 of the 130 million books published and printed throughout the world. And the measure is how many. And so that's what I'm going to look at today. So what we have is these 6. I'm going to go down through them. I think you'll find some very interesting statistics from it all. Let's see how things look. Number 1 book, the Bible, son of a gun. Great, I love it. I love the Bible. 5 to 7 billion Bibles have been printed since the early 1600s when Gutenberg said, here's a press and we can start putting things off. 5 to 7 billion. How long did it take? Well, logically from Adam to Christ, so 2,000 years, but how long does it take to translate a Book of Mormon? I'm trying to get some comparatives here if I can. So I looked up on Google how long it take to translate the Book of Mormon, and it said, well, years if not decades, and certainly need a group of scholars around the process. So, okay, no real definitives. It was kind of an average. There's been many translations of the book or the Bible. So, interesting. Well, what's second? And on down the road. So let's just take them one at a time. Number 2 is the Little Red Book. Have you heard of that before? It's the quotations of Chairman Mao over in China. 900 million copies of that particular book. That's a lot of copies, but there are a lot of Chinese. Okay. Some things that we know about that. Mao took 13 years to create the little book. And the way he did that is he wrote quotations. It was published in a paper over these 13 years and then compiled after they were done. Mao was 71 when he started and 84 when he stopped. 13 years. So, again, just context. So here's a book that's extremely popular, been printed a lot by a very old man over a long period of time. Interesting. Let's go to number 3. That's the Quran, brought forth by Muhammad, whether by God or not. They say yes, we say no. What statistics do we know there? Well, on the Quran, there's 800 million copies of the Quran. Quite a few. I'm sure all these are estimates, not specifics at this point in time. It took 23 years for Muhammad to create the book. 23 years. He was 40 when he started, and 63 when he stopped. So, again, we see an older person over time, 23 years, a long time, writing a book of Scripture. Again, interesting. Book of Mormon down the road a little bit. We're going to compare it. Number 4. This is the one I know least about in terms of information. It's the Chinese dictionary. No authors found, at least in Google. No length of time found in Google. But there's 567 million copies of that little baby printed. So the first 4 books out of 130 million books, 2 are Chinese. Kind of interesting. Now we're getting down to the fun stuff. Next, number 5, is the first novel. What novel would be the most famous novel ever printed, or the most printed of novels? Let's check it out. Here we have Don Quixote. I wouldn't have guessed that. Interesting. 500 million copies printed. Took about 10 years. Cervantes was 58 to 67 years old when he created it. He was called a novelist, a playwright, and a poet. So he was a writer. He was someone who produced, probably the most famous author in all of Spain. That's where he was born, just outside of Madrid, and died in Madrid. But that's the most printed novel in the world. It's in 60 languages. So definitely many people have read it, seen it. Interesting. That's the 5th. Now we get down to the 6th, and there's a tie. The first one I'll save the Book of Mormon for last because it's in those 6, is Tale of Two Cities. Well, who wrote that? That was Dickens. So what statistics do I know about them? Just over 200 million copies of Tale of Two Cities. It took 1 year for him to write. So that's the shortest of all these. So the Bible, years to decades. Little red book, 13 years. The Quran, 23 years. Chinese dictionary, don't know. Don Quixote, took him about 10 years to write that book. He was 58 to 67 years old when he did it. So again, you're seeing older people taking time to write these books that seem so valuable and are printed so much. Dickens. Well, what we know about Dickens is, again, 1 year. So he wrote it as a serial. So he'd write a chapter, plunk it out there in the newspaper, and people would buy the newspaper. And it was wildly successful. After the year, it was all done, and they published the book itself. Dickens was 47 years old, which is just over twice as old as Joseph at the translation of the Book of Mormon. Interesting. It was the 12th book he had written, so he certainly had experience in writing. Something that was interesting and brought up as I was reading through on Dickens. So he approached writing seriously. He would get up at 7, have breakfast, clean himself, in whatever way or form or fashion he would do that, and then he would start writing. He'd write from 9 to 2, about 2,000 words every day. Well, it's 5 days a week, 6 days a week. I don't really know that. But then he'd take the rest of the day, go out and stroll around and have a good time. That's his MO. So a lot came out of his brain, boom, 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 boom. I'm saying that because I'm going to bring it up just shortly here on the Book of Mormon. Okay, so we have older people over prolonged periods of time writing very popular books. So far, 2 of the books are spiritual, the Bible, the Quran. Now we come to the Book of Mormon. Can you imagine 130 million books published? And the Book of Mormon is tied for 6th. Statistics, please. Okay. Joseph was 23 years old. There was none of the above got even close to their older men, half or double the age to triple the age of Joseph Smith, 23 years old. Well, how long did it take? 57 days. 588 pages out of that first Book of Mormon. 57 days. That's over 10 pages a day of translation. Something interesting, if you divide the numbers, so you say, okay, there are 269,510 words in the Book of Mormon. There's 57 days. So how many words did he have to produce to complete this in 57 days? Now the anti-ists will say, oh, he started much younger. And again, on the legitimate side for them, he could have. If he really started at 17, he could have started, okay, I want to plan this out and come up with new words, have places, ways, and different things. Okay. But the actual translation of the Book of Mormon we have today started April 7th of 1829. 85 days later, 57 of those in translation, the book's done. That's 4,700 words every day. Dickens, who wrote many, many novels, averaged about 2,000 words a day. A genius, certainly a genius. Okay, well, what else do we know? The Book of Mormon is translated into 115 languages. I don't know how many languages there are in the world, but they're covering their bases in a lot of ways. 115 languages. So you kind of just go back to Moroni. Would Joseph box himself in so much by saying, oh yeah, I'm going to be known throughout the world for good and bad? Would anyone say that? Has anyone ever said that you can think of? I can't think of a one. And I told Joseph Smith right out of the gate when he was 17, that was going to be the case. And here we have the Book of Mormon, tied for 6th out of 130 million books as the most published of books, 200 million plus. Shocking, stunning, amazing. Now, does that prove the Book of Mormon is true? No, it doesn't. But isn't it amazing? Again, what would the anti say? Well, Joseph's just making it up anyway, so he's claiming big things are going to happen. He's a young man in Palmyra. And no matter how hard the anti say, Palmyra was a big city, it was a town. And he thought, bigger than that? You'll be known for good and bad in New York. Okay, I can, take a shot at that. America. Again, America's only half as big then as it is today. Bigger than that. Every nation, kindred, and tongue will know me as for good and for bad. That's sweet to me because it has been fulfilled. Joseph is known for good and bad throughout the world, with the Book of Mormon being the key linchpin to that. Certainly the start of the church, the return of, or the restoration of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the priesthood restoration, many things, but the Book of Mormon stands out as Joseph's, either he did it or God did it, one of the two. And here we are at the very, 195 years, almost 200 years since things start rolling, and what do we have? Amazing evidence of prophecy being fulfilled. Well, that's all I've got. I really appreciate you following. Thanks so much, and I will see you soon.